you're living with a man or woman who is starving you of emotional intimacy, doesn't touch you, doesn't celebrate your birthday, doesn't see you, you are in pain. Now, what you do with that pain is your decision. Some people will go medicate that pain by having an affair, or gaining 50 pounds, or getting a six-pack.
Doug Weiss is a licensed psychologist and the executive director of Heart to Heart Counseling Center.
He is a nationally recognized expert on sexual addiction and intimacy issues.
He's also a speaker, author, and television host.
There are different types of addicts. So talk to us about the 6 types.
The first is the biological, creating the sexual template, ring the bell, feed the dog, ring the bell, feed the dog. The second is psychological. There's pain in the soul, so you find yourself and you begin to use fantasy to compensate for what you're needing in your life. There is the sexual abuse. They actually duplicate, either as perpetrator or as victim, the behavior. And there's the spiritual person. They're looking for God in all the wrong places, and as soon as they have a spiritual encounter, they're done with it. And then there is the intimacy anorexic sex addict. They're too busy for you. They blame you for the problems. They withhold love, withhold praise, withhold sex.
What's the path to recovery?
Day one, we find out what type of sex addict they are. Now, this will surprise you.
Every day, you are making your brain better, or you are making it worse. Stay with us to learn how you can change your brain for the better every day. People come to Amen clinics from all over the world for answers, with 11 clinics in major hubs: Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, DC, LA, Miami, New York, Orange County, Seattle, San Francisco, and Scottsdale. Expert brain care is closer than you think. Visit amenclinics.com. We are so excited to welcome you to the Change Your Brain Everyday podcast. We have Dr. Doug Weiss with us, who's a renowned psychologist, author, speaker, expert in sexual addiction recovery, intimacy issues, and faith-based counseling. With over 30 years of experience, he's the founder and executive director of Heart to Heart Counseling Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado. His center offers intensive therapy programs, support groups, counseling services for individuals and couples dealing with sexual addiction, which we're going to talk about in the first podcast. He's going to stay with us for a second one on eating disorders. He's authored over 40 books, produced numerous therapeutic DVDs. He coined the term intimacy anorexia. I'm so excited to learn about that, to describe the withholding of emotional, physical, and spiritual intimacy in marriage. He's also the president of the American Association of Sex Addiction Therapy, a certification training program for sex addiction partners of sex addicts, which we should talk about, and intimacy anorexia. A devout Christian, Dr. Weiss integrates spiritual principles such as prayer, forgiveness, and accountability into his therapeutic methods, helping clients connect their faith with their personal development journey. So, Doug, thank you so much.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. I'm excited to talk about these topics and to help people understand that there's hope and there's freedom. You know, when you hear the word sexual addiction, sometimes it's like a cloud comes in the room.
Yeah, it feels like it's more and more these days.
But I'm like 40 years clean and the sun shines bright. And I've seen thousands of couples get better and connect, and men get free and, you know, quadruple their businesses and go into their callings and become better dads, and women as well. We have books on female sexual addiction, which is a whole nother topic. It's raging right now, especially on college campuses. And so I'm glad we're talking about this, because this is where a lot of people live, but there's no sign out the door. You know what I'm saying? It says, hey, I'm struggling.
And it's probably going to get worse with
I have job security
addiction.
It's
got job security.
Yeah. I mean, for the last 20 years, you know, when we were talking about Mark Laser, when we started, I mean, you pretty much had to go find pornography. Now it's in your phone. You know what I'm saying?
Like sixth grade.
And it's younger than that. And
it's
so
bad.
we find...
No, it's 8, 9-year-olds.
And
they
it's
get
really
phones.
sad.
Yes, and they get addicted to pornography, and they get it robs their development unit neurologically. What it does to the brain, you know that, and it's significant when you attach your sexuality, the most powerful thing you've been given, to an object relationship. And so, yeah, it's a setup for failure.
No, I've seen it in volunteering in classrooms. You know, I think as soon as kids were able to have phones with them is when I noticed it. Maybe it was happening earlier
absolutely.
than that.
No, absolutely. That's when it really expedited.
And the ones who had older siblings, it was worse.
Yes. Yeah, because they got exposed to things because when you're on the internet, you can go, like when we were younger, you had Playboy, you had Penthouse. Okay, it was pretty tame compared to what in a second you can get into beastie. You can get into crazy stuff, and your 6-year-old, you don't even have abstract reasoning to process what you're looking at.
So talk about what is sexual addiction?
Well, I mean, sexual addiction, first of all, if you are one, you are.
Really?
Because you tried to stop.
Mm.
You made promises to yourself to stop. Sounds like addiction, right? You've had consequences oftentimes, and you kept using beyond those consequences. But it's really using the sexual behavior to medicate either past pain or current stresses in a way that's not productive in your life. And there's 6 types of sex addicts, and we can talk about that. But there's different ways to be going down the road to arrive at the city of sex addiction. But once you're there, you have to get out.
Can I ask you a question, though?
Absolutely.
When you say you are, it seems to me like society keeps trying to make this normal, like pornography and all the, the Pornhub and all these things. Like it's a normal thing now. And so if we're trying to normalize it, then how do people know? At what point do they know that they're in trouble?
Well, what happens is, even though other cultures and Asian cultures and European cultures, they're ahead of us on that curve, okay? And so we've been raising kids in pornography for longer than we think. But like you have to made it popular, mainstreamed it in our generation, right? But what happens is that the human spirit still knows when it's doing something it ought not to do it. Mm. Like you can steal a cookie in any culture and know you stole the cookie. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And when you're looking at the nakedness of a person, which is really true holiness, because we're made in that image, you're doing something that's not appropriate. And if you can't stop, even when you want to, you begin to realize that maybe I am the problem.
Do you think shame that's where shame starts?
Well, shame becomes part of the cycle because you do something wrong and then you either feel guilt or shame. Guilt is, I did something wrong. Shame is, I am something wrong. Well, if you keep doing something wrong long enough, you begin to believe that I am something wrong. And then shame fuels the whole addiction cycle, whether it's alcohol, drugs, food, sex, or any of those behaviors.
So how have you seen it change since you started 30 years ago?
Well, it used to be like the single images, one page at a time. Now you can go fast, click, 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 click. It used to be that people would crash. It would take 20 or 30 years to crash. And now they're crashing in their adolescence. They're crashing in their early 20s. In their 20s, they're not able to maintain a physical relationship with their partners or wives because of the high level of reinforcement at the speed it's going on. Plus, with technologies, we're entering a phase, you and I will probably see this phase where men and women will be addicted to sex robots.
Oh, geez.
We are already there in Japan. No, they have these dolls that you can, okay, another conversation, but we're going to see, so technology advances this, okay? And when they start programming these machines, I have a book called Upgrade Your Sex Life with how someone is actually designed to hear in the sexual space. Oh. They're going to become super addicted super quick to these machines, which is going to really, we're going to face a challenge. I already have the website. So we're going to face this challenge. Okay. And so technology is advancing that. And so also the apps that have come out. Okay. You and I, we had to go find a pretty girl, right? We had to talk to them. We had to take them out to dinner. We had to buy, we had to spend time with them. We had to do all of that work. Now it's like they go on an app and it's like, do you want to hook up?
So it's so frustrating. And you bring that up. So we've got girls, lots of girls that are just before college age and just graduating college. And my biggest frustration, and I tell them all the time, your generation doesn't know how to date anymore. There's no such thing as courting. There's no such thing as intimacy. It's these apps. They feel to me like they've ruined everything.
Well, there's a certain part of the population. I have a product called Finding Mr. Right for that age and showing them that there's boys and men and there's men of God. Okay. And the questions to ask to find out what you're looking at, because male does not equal man.
No.
Right. And so there are really good men who aren't doing pornography at 20 years old. Okay. There are good men. Okay. But you're right. The apps have made it for the lazy people, gets them into expedited trouble, which they can become addicted to, because why not have a different flavor every week? Right?
Well, now girls are beginning to think that that's the expectation and they have every right to behave that way and is expected of them. And so they don't feel good about themselves, but I've noticed that they're doing this.
And that's been going on since the 60s. So
it's terrible.
But you're right. It's exponentially worse. And so we get into sexual addiction because like the one type of sex addict is biological, neurological, right? So when you have a sexual release, you get the highest level of endogenous opiates, hits the prefrontal cortex of the brain, and boom, you attach to whatever you're looking at. And I mean, whatever you're looking at. It can be a person of a different race. It could be same gender. It could be an animal. It could be an object. You glue and attach.
Or a child.
And I can tell you funny stories.
This
about all
is
that.
the arousal template.
The arousal template, yeah. We have a video on sexual templates because you create a sexual template. And here's the thing is these kids don't know that. And so they're interjecting the sexual template training, but they don't know who they're going to marry.
So wherever you were, whatever you were doing, whatever you were looking at, when you were first aroused, begins to set up neural pathways.
Absolutely.
That you want to go back. So it could be even at somebody's shoes. All of a sudden you get attached
I have one
to
guy,
shoes.
so I don't know how graphic, I won't be graphic, but this is a true story early in my career. And he's been free for over decades, okay? But when he was a kid, he lived on a farm. And so when he was being with himself, the noise in the house would go bang, 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 way. So they'd make fun of him the next day, laugh at him. Smart kid, figured out, can't do that. So I go out. So he went outside past the barn. What was he wearing? His boots. And you either look up or look down. So he was looking down and he neurologically got attached to his boots. When I met him, he had a boot collection, like from here to that wall over there.
Is that what's going on with your shoes?
And he wouldn't. Another topic, okay. But he literally had that, and he would never be sexual with a woman unless he was wearing boots.
Oh, that's so
because he
interesting.
attached to the object relationship. This is how we get into cross-dressing. This is how we get into fetishes. Because of what we do is we hijack the sexual template and say, no, not a person, this. And
I have a book I wrote called The Brain in Love, and there's a chapter in it called Weird Sex Fiends and Fetishes. And the patient actually shared with Mark that was addicted to cows.
Oh,
and
no,
the section was, can you say moo?
Well, this guy actually thought cows were enjoying it. So yeah.
Oh boy.
So when you work in sexual addiction, you hear all kinds of stories. I've been doing it for 40 years. But you can attach to whatever you want. Now, here's the beauty thing though. You can also, because you are neuroplastic, you can train yourself to attach to a person, even if you spent decades in sexual addiction. I've taught many couples how to have incredible sexual relationship, eyes open, lights on, nurturing conversation, and attached to the soul and the being of the other person. So because we're so wonderfully made, no matter what you've done, you can heal.
That's amazing.
Now it takes a process. It'll take accountability. It'll take more work than, you could think right up front, but the back end is beautiful.
That's amazing. We're opening so many doors now, but that just really got me thinking about where this is really an awful topic and I hate it, but how molestation starts, how it's continued on, why people molest children and how that cycle continues.
And then exploitation.
And
absolutely.
I'm assuming it has something to do with this, obviously.
Project of how to restore
These girls
and boys who've been sexually abused, but then exploited. Having their fathers put their abuse, they videotaped on the internet.
Oh, wow.
And Pornhub actually started a whole subsection of their platform so you can upload home videos during the COVID period. So
we're definitely in a battle for sexuality. It started around the 60s and we'd lost. Okay, so we're trying to catch back up. But there's a lot of casualties, and we didn't even mention the wives of these men or the husbands of these wives who really love and care for them, and yet they're not enough, either because of the pornography or they're having relationships with other people. And the tragedy is a lot of time with sexual addiction, it's the external environment that has to tell you that you're not okay. It's the job loss. It's the getting caught. It's the police officer catching you. It's the wife who's caught you with an email or a cell phone or a text, and your world comes together. You have to choose which world you're going to live in. And the beauty of that is they can still heal and get better if they get into some accountability groups, work the steps, do the program. We do 5-day intensives at Heart to Heart Counseling Center. Our success rate's in the 90th percentile with sexual addiction. Okay, so people can get better. Oh, we've been doing it for decades, so we're not practicing at this point, right? There's he's not practicing anymore. He knows what he's doing with stuff, right? And so there's freedom. And there's also hope for the ladies, because for so long they were called the wrong thing. They were called codependents. They were called co-addicts and all that stuff that was wrong. they are actually partner betrayal trauma survivors. And the trauma of being neglected, we didn't talk about intimacy anorexia yet, but the trauma of being with someone who wants to be with something or someone else on a regular basis is traumatic.
Yeah,
And
I can't.
I've
seen that.
It has real PTSD. We have a book on that.
So there's so much to talk about. Let me organize us. You talked about it's a loss of control. You know you have a problem.
Absolutely.
And there's 6 different types. And I like that so much. I actually wrote a book on addiction called Unchain Your Brain, Breaking the Addictions That Steal Your Life. And to put everybody in the same program, sort of silly, because there are different types of addicts. There are impulsive addicts, or compulsive addicts, or sad addicts, or anxious addicts, or addicts who've had a head injury and they can't control their behavior. So talk to us about the 6 types.
Sure. The way that we've paradigmed that, and we were the first one to kind of categorize sex addicts in different categories. The first is the biological. That's what we talked about, creating the sexual template, ring the bell, feed the dog, ring the bell, feed the dog. Right?
You're conditioned.
Okay. The second is psychological. There's neglect in the family. There's pain in the soul. And as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, you can't go to the bar and tie one on. So you find yourself and you begin to use fantasy to compensate for what you're needing in your life. But that neurological response from the orgasmic response, you attach to that. And you become addicted in that process, psychologically dependent. Okay. There is the sexual abuse person. And then with this situation, they actually duplicate either as perpetrator or as victim the behavior. Okay. And so like I had a young guy who would go and have encounters with much older, heavyweight males. Well, that was the person who abused him. And he kept perpetrating the same thing.
As the victim.
As the victim. And some people play the other role. They switch to the perpetrator, right? Then there's the spiritual person. I've only met a handful of these. They're looking for God in all the wrong places. And as soon as they have a spiritual encounter, they're done with it. Okay? So they don't usually show up in my office. And then there is the intimacy anorexic sex addict. Now, this person's unique. So intimacy anorexia is the active withholding of spiritual, emotional, and sexual intimacy from your spouse. They're too busy for you. They blame you for the problems. They withhold love, withhold praise, withhold sex. They are unwilling, aren't able to talk about their feelings, use anger and silence as a way to control. They have criticism of you, that kind of stuff. And you feel married and alone, but they're still having fun with themselves or others. Okay. And then the last one is more on your camp where there is a chemical imbalance, the mood disorder / sex addict. They're treating their bipolar. They're treating their manic depression. They're treating depression. They're treating head injuries, another thing. But they're using the neurological balancing that the ejaculation response gives or the orgasm response gives to help them modulate their brain, to put themselves to sleep or to just get through the day sometimes. And so there's different paths that people get there.
So I have a question about one of them. You said there's the type that they either play the victim or the perpetrator. So what about someone who's been sexually abused, but they become like extreme protector or almost, vigilante mindset where they're going to harm someone who hurts someone they love? Or
sure. Well,
where would that fall?
Sexual trauma affects you in so many different ways. So if you took 100 computers and put a bullet in each one, each computer would have a different problem. And that's what sexual abuse does. So for some, they're going to become super controlling because they want to feel safe. Their need is to feel safe. Some are going to become out of control. Okay. Some will go to hyposexual. Some will go to hypersexual. Some will go to risky behavior. Some won't risk for anything. So sexual abuse is one of the things where it's a bullet and who knows exactly what's happened here. It's very individualistic. Okay. I was sexually abused, but it didn't make me go to try to repeat that behavior. Okay. And I dealt with that a long time ago, did the work that we talked about in all the books that we have. And so you can heal from sexual trauma, but it's unique to you how it affected you. Because there are people, even in the studies, that really there's almost no impact on them. And then there's other people who have a slight incident happen and they're totally devastated.
So do you remember when we were dating and I couldn't say the word molested? I didn't think I had been molested because in my mind, I think it was a survival thing.
Sure.
I was like, well, other people had it worse. What happened to me wasn't as bad as what happened to other people. And it wasn't.
Right.
So I think that's how I dealt with it.
But it's still trauma to you.
Well, I never thought it was.
If somebody had done that to Chloe,
Yeah.
What would you do? And what was your answer?
Rip their beating heart out of their chest and feed it to my dog.
You're right.
Like it's like there's no question. And it was so
and she's
weird
such a mild lady.
because I can see it, but I couldn't internalize it.
Right.
It's very weird.
I've actually used that same technique with a lot of my clients over the 40 years. If that was if that was your boy, if that was your daughter, what would you do? And they have exactly the same response. Okay, because sometimes you just can't see it when it's you.
No.
Because you've figured out how to adapt.
Right.
Okay, and put it in its little box, and you can't see it objectively.
Right.
I can't tell you how many men I have had to tell, listen, when you were 13 and she was 19, that was sexual abuse.
Yeah.
When you were 16 and she was 35, that was sexual abuse. I didn't realize I was sexually abused by several older women. When I was in high school, I'd go out to bars and I'd go home with 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds. Right? I thought I was lucky until I was about 5 years sober. And I go, wait a minute. That wasn't right. They should have taken me home. I was only 16 years old. I should have been there.
The question I would ask is, why were you in the bar when you were 16?
But he still was 16.
I was 16. I was sexually abused, right?
Yeah.
I was, I never met my father.
Yeah.
Okay. I was put in foster homes. And so, yeah, I had some issues going on and I was drinking. And so, and I was already sexually addicted. So if you could combine alcohol and women, where do you do that? In a bar. And I was like tough and mean.
And you
so
were
at
good
16,
looking, and
they would give me a drink, and I would just sit there, and there you go. So many men don't identify their sexual trauma, especially if it's connected to a woman.
Yeah. So, but it's almost like what happened to me wasn't the same as if the same thing happened to someone else. You just can't.
Right.
So let's talk about recovery. So if someone comes to you and they go, I have a problem, and I suppose many people are there because their partner is furious at them.
Absolutely.
And they're like, you need to go get help.
Yes.
What's the path to recovery?
Well, if they're doing intensive, on day one, we find out what type of sex act they are. Now, this will surprise you. A lot of women want to know the truth to heal the relationship and heal their heart.
Oh, no, I think I fully understand that.
So oftentimes we'll give the man an opportunity to do a polygraph so he can do that. That really helps to give
That
them
would be
a
me.
Polygraph.
polygraph.
That would definitely be me.
Because here's what happens.
I like it.
No, because the truth will set you free, right? So if he's still in secrets, what does he have? Shame. Shame is part of the addiction cycle. So if we can get rid of shame on Monday and she's still there, which 99% chance she is going to still be there. She just wants to know, I know the truth. Women will know they know the truth. They can forgive almost anything. Women are incredible. There'll never be a book that can comprehend the woman's heart to be able to absorb pain. Men just don't have the capacity like that. And they're able to do like, hey, I'm all in if you're all honest. So we give them the opportunity to be all honest. Okay. And then we find out what's going on with her. Then we do couples counseling, and then they go to groups and they do that kind of stuff. But it is 12-step groups. So they'll be in groups for, quite a while. They work their steps, they work their workbooks, and they're able to start moving through what they got to move through. Again, if they got sexual trauma, we deal with that during that week. And some of them, we have a neuromodulation thing that we do, and that helps them, especially the women who've been through trauma. And so it just depends on what they're bringing to the table. It's not cookie cutter because like you look at every brain's different, right? When I look at a person who's a sex addict, I got to find out how did they get here and now what do we need to get them better? So it's very individualistic, but there are principles that help them do that. And they can do this no matter where they are in the country.
So step one is know the truth. The truth will set you free.
Ask for help.
Them.
Ask for help.
Ask for help.
Yeah. That's the hard part.
Group. Really.
Group is huge.
Couples counseling.
Yes.
Now Dr. Laser would send me mostly the guys.
Right.
And 70% of the time they had low frontal lobe activity.
So what did that tell you?
The break in their brain was not as healthy as it could be.
Right.
Very high percentage of them had either head trauma or ADD of one form or another. Balancing that at least improves their impulse control. And their partners had trauma patterns. So I published a number of studies on PTSD in the brain. And
I have
it
a whole
shows
chapter on that for the
their
women.
emotional brains work too hard, which means it's hard for them to let go. Right. It's like the trauma, it plays a movie in their head and it loops over and over.
And then we diagnose it wrongly histrionic. They're not histrionic. They have histrionic features, but it's because of the trauma. I have a whole chapter on that.
Oh, that's
and what
so
I did is I
interesting.
took the PTSD symptoms, and I, instead of it being individualistic, I put it towards your marriage. And in that paradigm, they came up into 90th percentile on almost every symptom of PTSD.
Right.
Partners of intimacy anorexics, partners of sex addicts, and women who've experienced infidelity. And that's the partner betrayal trauma book, because there's so much information that women don't know, and it helps them normalize it. Like, oh, okay, I'm raging. Yep, that's kind of normal. You've been in a car accident. If you ever go into an ICU unit, you find people yelling. You find
I was
people
a trauma
who are not
nurse.
themselves, right? So yeah, you see, this is not the best version of them,
No.
right? But then they come back 6 months later. Oh, you were so sweet
Right.
and wonderful. I love
They're
you,
so
right?
mean to you, and you have to know it's not about you.
It's not about you, right? It's like the dog that's got hit by a car. They're not trying to bite you.
Right.
They're trying to get out of pain.
So true.
Interesting. How do you help the partners who have this intimacy trauma?
Well, for them, first of all, when we do their assessment, we make sure that's not the only trauma that they've had. So we got to go through the whole sexual history, including self-behaviors. We got to go through family of origin stuff, make sure that's what's that all about. Make sure there's not been any rapes or abortions, because abortion's a trauma. And I can tell you so many women have never told anybody but me. We actually have a product called Grace After Abortion, because that's a secret that so many women are traumatized by, and they're still living a traumatized life because they haven't been open and honest about it, done the healing work on that. So once we get that done, then they go to groups because they need to be supported, because this is not something you can go tell your friends, okay? And they're going to say, divorce them. And that's not what you need to hear.
No,
Okay?
you need friends who are,
You need to know other women who've gone through this, who are choosing to try to work it out if he's willing, and to be on the same page you're on. And so the support groups help them with that, okay? And then there's 100 exercises they work through. There's a step book work they work through. And of course, they have a counselor ongoing to support them through the process for their ups and downs, because they not only have partner betrayal trauma, they have grief. All the losses
Yes.
that they've experienced in a nanosecond can barely be computed. Past, present, future, all in like that. A woman realizes her life was not what it was. Those pictures have no meaning. That vacation you acted out. When I was in the hospital, you did this. Oh my gosh. Now, presently, my finances are in jeopardy. My family's in jeopardy. My kids may not go to college. We may not make it. And future, what if I have to do in a nanosecond? The woman's brain is just processing all of that trauma.
we never stop.
And it's, they are the heroes in the story. That's what I say. Because a woman who can take that kind of bullet, pull it out, and still hug the person who had the gun, that's powerful.
I love that. But I have a question. We hear these terms like borderline personality, women who have this risky behavior that, risk-taking, they'll go have sex in a bathroom when they're out to dinner with their boyfriend or their husband, or they'll do crazy stuff like that. What do you think of that? I mean, that label.
Well, borderline personality, there's a legitimate diagnosis for that, but sexual addiction is one of the options there. They could become just as addicted to shopping, because to meet criteria, they usually have two addictions. Could be smoking, could be food, could be exercising, could be anything. Some of them, it looks more glamorous on TV if they're also sex addicts, right? Like we can think of some movies that go back in our history, right? And so, but I've never met a borderline that wasn't sexually abused. Okay. And so that shatters them in ways, and the way that they've dealt with it is by being this kind of impulsive, out of control, angry, not able to organize. Okay. And it's probably a lot to do with their brain more than anything, because it's been through so much trauma.
I have a cocktail for borderlines, because often I see they have low frontal lobe function. They also have an obsessive pattern in their brain, and their left temporal lobe is usually low in activity. And so stabilizing that really helps.
Absolutely.
Balancing their brain helps. But many of them, like you say, have trauma.
Right.
And if you balance their brain, and then we like EMDR, specific psychological treatment for trauma that can be so helpful. When I heard the chaos Tana grew up in, her ACE score, adverse childhood experiences, an 8 out of 10. My first gift to her was 10 sessions.
I'm like, don't shrink me.
EMDR.
So I think I'm the opposite camp. I'm like
The
very
best thing
controlling
I
over
did
my environment. martial arts, like very, very controlled.
You were going to be safe.
Absolutely.
You were going to be safe.
At all expenses,
Right.
at all costs.
Yeah.
Tell us a story that's like close to your heart on how your work has helped somebody.
Oh, I can tell you thousands. I mean, where a couple comes in. Yeah, well, I'll give you a general story. A couple comes in on Monday and they've been married for 20 years. He's cheated on her. She didn't know it, right? She finds out. She gets the truth on Monday and they start to repair. And what happens is love grows. Okay, he starts clearing up because now he doesn't have any shame. There's no secrets between him and her. Usually by Wednesday or Friday, they're being physically intimate. I mean, and we give them exercises where they look each other in the eyes and they pray, they share feelings, they build the blocks of marriage that they just didn't have the skills to do. No one taught them how to have a marriage. And we give them those skills and they start using them and instantly they start feeling closer and attached. And they leave holding their hands and feeling that they can do happily ever after. It's going to be work, but we can do this. Yeah. We're designed that we want to be healthy spiritually, emotionally, sexually, relationally, financially. We want that. And a lot of times you have to give people skills. Addicts miss skill development. We have a book called Emotional Fitness because they don't know how to process emotions. When they get overwhelmed emotionally, what do? Boom, they go off to addiction. All addicts do that. And so when you teach them how to have their feelings and how to do that with their wives or their husbands and be present, now they have a place where this skill development can happen and intimacy can attach. And the neurologicalness of attachment can happen because they're looking into someone else with their heart. They're looking into another heart and they can see that person and be seen. And that's really what we really want, is to be seen and to be able to see the other soul. You know, I love looking into my wife's eyes and seeing her heart. It's just like, wow, what a privilege.
It's amazing. But it almost seems like, because I've heard so many people talk about situations like this and they're not able to do that very easily. It seems like having the right person help you, obviously, and guide
your
you.
Intuition is so right.
It also seems like the spiritual component is critical, because if you don't have something beyond yourself and why you're justified in being angry, it seems like it'd be pretty challenging.
Well, all addictions use the 12 steps, and that's a spiritual program. But your intuition is correct in that someone who is an addict, you know, they are causing pain, but our model, the first model of sexual addiction treatment, which Mark was part of, treated the addict, but didn't really know what to do with the partner or the marriage. Our model is triune. We treat the addict, the partner with child trauma, and the marriage all at the same time. So our results are expedited. She's not waiting a year to get a disclosure. She gets a disclosure on Monday. Okay. She can start doing her anger and grief and losses Monday. Okay. They can start doing couples work on Monday. Okay. And so as he's recovering, the marriage is recovering and she's recovering. So she's not staying in that rage for 8 months or a year. Because
how long is the program?
Well, it's a week.
It's a week.
You know, for 5 days, right? But then you're in support groups for 6 months or a year because you want to be supported as you're going through the process, right? And a lot of these people end up helping other people and starting support groups where they are.
Well, that's the best way to get
well. Amazing.
Yeah, it is, because once you build a community of like-minded people, you can get there. And one of the best things that happens in intensive is not just the counseling, but they go into a room and we have community groups. And so these people they've been sober 5, 10, 15, 20 years, some of them. And they go into a group and they see a guy who's dumber than them and they go, wow, he's clean for 6 years. I can do this.
Oh, interesting.
You know, or a wife who's going through pain and going, wow, she's been here and she's gotten well. I can do this.
Right. So what is the difference? And I know this to be on the flip side too. It's not always just the man who's having affairs.
Right. Absolutely.
What is the difference between someone who's had an affair? Maybe they felt emotionally starved for a long time. I don't know. Whatever it is, they've had an affair, maybe not a bunch of affairs, versus someone who's a sex addict. How do you make that determination?
Well, that's a great question. And you add a question within your question. Men do work with this differently. We have a DVD called The Betrayed Man, because men deal with betrayal differently than women. They don't have, it's a different dynamic and they got to understand that. But to your question, as far as like separating, usually the questions posed to me, well, what if a guy wants to have sex, you know, X amount of times a week? Is he an addict? No, it's not about the times. It's about whether he's connecting to the person or not.
Intimacy.
Okay. Someone can have an accidental, not accidental, but they can have an affair for whatever reason, and it's a fluke. Okay. And they're not sex addicts. There's no pattern of neurological attachment to objects or porn. There's no pattern. There's no patterns. Now, and I've had a few of those guys in my office over 4 years. They got flown in because they had an affair, and she thought for sure he was the sickest dog in the world. And I have to say, no, ma'am, he's just stupid. He is clinically stupid, but he's not a sex addict, okay? Because there's none of these other things. And sometimes they say, well, okay, and then they still might want to polygraph once a year to verify that he doesn't get stupid again. I'm like, you know what? I can live with that, and so can he. Okay.
I mean, dumb dogs usually can learn, but
right, but there's the person who makes a mistake, but then there's a person who continues to do the same behavior. And oftentimes the affair is a result, okay, of behavior. They have been with themselves sexually and with pornography for years, often before they cross that line. And it fuels it. And that's why the women are like, well, he just does pornography. Right now, that's all he's doing. But that is a seed which will grow into a certain kind of plant, and that plant will cause a lot of pain.
do you think if one of the partners is neglected long enough, it can actually drive the other person to do something like that?
We haven't gotten into intimacy anorexia, but when you're living with an intimacy anorexic man or woman who is starving you of emotional intimacy, doesn't touch you, doesn't celebrate your birthday, doesn't see you, you're a manager in their life, you feel like you don't have any value, right? You are in pain. Now, what you do with that pain is your decision. Okay, so yes, some people will go medicate that pain by having an affair or gaining 50 pounds or getting a six-pack. Okay, the pain is because of the spouse. The process that person goes through is theirs. Does that make sense? So it's not cause and effect exactly, because some people can be starved for 10, 15, 20 years and be faithful to that person. Okay, some people are starved for a couple years, like, this is not fun. I'm going to go X, whatever X is for them. So it's not cause and effect, but the pain does create a set of circumstances where you have to deal with the pain one way or the other.
Well, there's also mismatched libidos.
Right.
And people fall in love often when they're young, when their testosterone levels are healthy. But then over time, as they wane, now you have these mismatched libidos, and one person's just never interested and the other person's still interested. That sets them up.
It sets them up.
And there's one other thing we're just thinking, given a lot of our patients like hormone replacement, and I'm a fan, the reason hormones drop as you age, it's the planet's way of getting rid of you. So I'm sort of not okay with that. But if the doctor overdoes it and your testosterone level goes too high,
it can make you crazy.
Your empathy goes down and your libido goes up, which is a prescription for divorce.
Or going to jail or having an affair or...
Right.
Yeah. Again, those are influences that person has to manage. Absolutely. But the neglect is real. Okay. And a lot of people listening to us are in that situation. We'll talk about that another time. But I've never seen someone who had an affair because of pain feel good about themselves, even though they medicated. I've had ladies like in my office on Monday, she finds out it wasn't one person, it was 15 people. And she wants to say, you know what? I'm going to go out and have an affair. I go, ma'am, let's start.
You're going to hate yourself.
I want you not to do that for 6 months. Can you promise? Let's just not do that for 6 months, okay? Because I've never met one who didn't hate themselves the rest of their life. Let's heal you up first, and then you can make a decision later down the road. But please don't react in that way, because I've never seen a woman recover from that really well.
I love that advice.
Absolutely.
We have to wrap this up. How can people learn more about your center and you?
Sure. They can go to a couple websites, drdugweiss.com or sexaddict.com, or they can call 719-278-3708. And if they Google me, they'll find, all that stuff out there is available.
And also talk about your book.
Oh, this book, the new book is called Forgiveness for Everyone. This is for all of us who've been hurt. And it has a lot of the exercises we've done in counseling, and it's very, very super helpful. That's a wonderful thing that's coming out right now. And
awesome.
So like you, I like to write. And so it's usually a continual thing.
So thank you so much for being with us.
Well,
You're going to be with us on the next one.
That was so good.
You're listening, watching Change Your Brain Everyday podcast. Tana and I are grateful to you. Please subscribe, leave a review, be part of our community, and check out Dr. Doug Weiss. There are days when I need to be at my best, whether it's back-to-back clinic sessions, long writing days, or just keeping up with life. That's when I take Peak Energy from BrainMD. It gives me clean, steady energy without jitters or crashes. And I'm not the only one who loves it. It just won a 2025 Nexty Award, beating over 500 other supplements. If you want real energy that lasts, check it out at brainmd.com and use the code podcast20 for 20% off. If you like this week's episode, please make sure to leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. And follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Doc Amen and Tana at Tana Amen.